How many of you want to have good marks in your examination? This was the first question I asked. All the children of class 8 raised their hands. They all wanted to have good marks in the examination. I said, children, let me ask you the second question. Answer carefully. And I asked them, how many of you want to be successful in life? All the children raised their hands again. I said, fine. So you want to have good marks in the examination, and you also want to be successful in life, right? Now my third question you need to think and answer. Let's say God has not given you both the option. You got to choose one of them. You are in a system where you cannot have good marks in the examination and also become successful. Under that situation, which one would you choose? How many of you like to have good marks in the examination but not become successful in their life? And how many of you want to be successful in life even if you don't have good marks in the examination? What do you think is the results? Most of the children wanted to be successful in life regardless of the marks. I know. God has not set any system like that. You can also study and have good marks in the examination and also become successful. But that is utopic. The real thing is becoming successful. That is the priority of life, isn't it? But let me tell you, having good marks in the examination, being successful are two different ball games. Having good marks in the examination requires following certain syllabus, following certain system, prescribed norms. So you have certain conditioned education style. But being successful is a different thing, where you got to learn from life. There are two kinds of learning. One learning is reading books. Another learning is experiencing the challenges of life. In the practical situation of life, let me ask you, which is the learning which comes of use most of the time? It is the learning from life. In book Life 101, Roger and William has very beautifully expressed the first lesson. They have mentioned 101 aspects of life, out of which the first one they mentioned is life is all about learning. Let me tell you a story, which I often say in my seminars. This story is about a very educated professor from the American university who retired one day and contacted a Zen master in the countryside of China, because he realized that I have studied a lot, but I have lived the same life. Every year the children graduate. I teach the same subject in the same university for a long 35 years. I have not done anything new. So he wanted to live his life. Today I am retired. So let me find out how to add few of the years that I have lost in my life. And the Zen master in the countryside gave him appointment a couple of months later, morning 7 o'clock, and he made it clear that you got to come in time. So it was a long journey for the professor, and he traveled on the sea, and then local transport, then walked long miles and reached that place just below the hill where that enlightened Zen master used to stay. The professor had a lot of expectations because he knew the Zen master has spiritual power and he can rejuvenate his youth. He can make an old man and a young man, and that's what he wanted. Morning 7 o'clock sharp, the professor was there in front of the Zen master's door. Sharp at 7 o'clock the door opens. The master comes out with a big smile and he says, "Professor, welcome. I'm happy that you came in time." Professor entered that small little cottage. It was a very small place, but very wonderfully decorated. And he found there a small table where there was a teapot lying. And from the mouth of the teapot, steam was oozing out. It was hot tea there inside, and there were 2 cups inverted. The master came and inverted the cup in front of the professor and picked up the teapot and started pouring tea in the cup. He kept on looking at the professor's eye and started pouring tea. Tea was filling up the teacup, but he kept on looking in the eyes of the professor and asked him casual question. He was still calm, but the professor was restless because repeatedly his eyes was dragged on the teacup, and soon the teacup got filled in with the tea and tea started spilling off, and that started soaking in the tablecloth and trickling down on the floor, but the master still kept pouring tea. The professor was so restless that he said, "Master, you have already filled up the cup." The master then looks at the cup, smiles, leaves the teapot on the side and tells the professor, "Professor, let me ask you a question. You have traveled long distance to be enlightened with my Zen teachings. Let me ask you, can anybody fill up a cup which is already filled in?" "No." "No," says the professor. And the master says, "Your mental cup is filled with all the knowledge of the world. Empty the cup, professor, because if the cup is filled, how can I pour the pure, beautiful knowledge on the cup which is already filled in?" The first lesson that the Zen master gave that educated, qualified professor who has gathered knowledge of the university, of the books, of the literatures, of all the prescribed science. But the master was not satisfied. He said, "Unlearn." Empty the cup means unlearn the knowledge. Because if the cup is empty, it is entitled to be filled up. And this one important thing we forget while we teach our children. How many parents want your children to be a doctor, engineer, Indian administrative service officer, or the police officer, or a lawyer? And you are doing everything, giving your children the education, and all the time you are pastoring into their head, repeatedly hammering them, "You got to be a doctor, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a doctor." And you make the children to fulfill certain unfulfilled things of your life. All the children, all the parents, most of the parents want their children to become what the parents failed to have become. So that's a conditioned knowledge. That's a conditional learning system. And the children lose their originality. That's why Rabindranath Tagore said, "Where the mind is without fear, where the knowledge is free, where the head is held high." And one of the greatest educationists of the century could think, because in his own life, he was a runner. He ran away from the school all his life. He never went to the school. But he became a great poet, a great Pandit. His literature was translated in so many languages. Even a great poet called Yeats could write the preface of Gitanjali. Such was the growth of this man. And all the people in the world who were successful, how many of them were academically brilliant? You ask the question. Was Einstein one of them? Was Newton one of them? Certainly not. Neither Bill Gates was. But he's a rich man. He's a successful man, a role model for many people. But we forget. We always want our children to be formally educated. There is nothing wrong with education. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not asking your children to be withdrawn from the school tomorrow. But let's understand one thing. Education is an advantage, but not the basic necessity. There are people who are not enough educated, but they are successful. Raise your hands. Just now, if you agree with me, there are so many educated people who are failure in the world. And also raise your hand if you agree that so many uneducated people are successful in the world. Which means to say, if you are investing everything for the education of your children, let me ask you, you are entitling them, you are always willing that your children should pass their examination, have some wonderful degrees, and become very important in the society. But will they become successful? What is the definition of success? The real definition of success is achievement recognized by people. Personal achievement recognized by people. That recognized by people element is absolutely separated from the system. If the person has to be recognized by people, then they have to learn something more than what they learn in order to have personal achievements in life. That bookish education will give them personal achievements in life. They will pass examination, they will become great, and they will one day find that they are a big man. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have, how many people know you, gentlemen, how many people love you, how many people respect you, how many people look at you as their role model, want to be like you. And how that can happen? That can happen when you know the people's skills, because it is people who are going to recognize you for you to be successful. It's people's perspective, not your personal perspective. So, you must also learn how to relate with people. You must also learn how to communicate with people. Love people, use things, not love things and use people. The education system is all about loving things, loving your money, your prosperity, your car, your bungalow, and all those materialistic things which you acquire. And you feel happy, you are successful, you are rich. Love people, use things, not love things, use people. That is the message. The modern system, the education system, is all about loving things, loving your prosperity, loving your achievements, loving your name, your fame, how much you have gained, how much money you got in your bank, what is the kind of car that you drive. All these are symbols of success. Unfortunately, they are not, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you want to be successful without being happy? None, I hope. Your life will be filled with miseries, but you will have a lot of money. Most people have that. But true success is together, being rich as well as being happy. Your material prosperity is supported by spiritual illumination. So, ladies and gentlemen, the real education is about zero, about unlearn and become original. Have your mind absolutely wide open, awaken to learn from life. The real learning comes from your interaction with life. The joy, the happiness, the suffering, the achievements, the failures, everything is necessary. I remember that small little girl who was a part of the participants in one of the prominent schools in Chandigarh where I was running a leadership training. This girl used to be silent. It was a long 12 classes, and every week once. And I used to go and train those children, those teenage children. And amongst them Simran was one. I remember Simran, she used to sit silently for the first 4 classes. And after the 4th class, when everyone left, she was sitting down and she came and said, I want to talk to you. I said, yes, Simran. And she said, Asit, for the first time I learnt in my life that I was not wrong. I asked her, what do you mean? She said, Asit, I loved writing poetries. And I thought I write good poetries. I read lots of poetries. I used to imagine that I will be a great poet. But my father is so stern. He said, you got to become an MBA. What's there in writing poetries? Your poetries will not give you money, not give you name, not give you fame. I used to write poetry silently. I secretly held my books. But after taking your classes, I realized I was not wrong. That's what I must do. Mr. Bawa, her father, came in her graduation and I offered him to work with me. After the graduation was over, he was a fine gentleman. He shook hands with me and said, you train children very well. I said, I don't know, but you must not be happy. What do you want your child to become? He said, I want my child to become MBA. But I said, Do you know that she is a great poet? Poet? What do you mean poet? I want my child to be an MBA. I said, Mr. Bawa, answer my question. If you got a small plant of mango, can you get jackfruit out of that plant? If you want to produce jackfruit of a mango plant, you will neither get a mango nor get a jackfruit. Most of the time, most parents are doing this mistake. They are not helping the child to become what they want to become. They are making the child to become what they failed to become. That great saying of Khalil Gibran touches my heart. How wonderfully he said, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They have come through you, not from you. I want to repeat it again and again. They have come through you, not from you. You are not the owner of your child. You are just a medium. Just like if you are having a rented house, you are certainly not the owner of that house. Someone else is. You have been given the house. And when you stay there, you don't consider the house is going to be with you after a few years. Those children have been given to you. And do you know what is your role? What's your role as a gardener, ladies and gentlemen? What does the gardener do? They rely on the plants to become what they have inside them to flourish. If there is a rose flower, it's going to become a beautiful rose. If it is lily, it's going to become a beautiful lily. If it is a genia, it's going to become a beautiful genia or a dahlia. What it does is, he only irrigates and barricades. Take this to words, parents. For every parent in the world, I recommend that you have only two responsibilities: irrigation and barricading. Let the plant grow. It's a small plant. So as a parent, you create a barricade around them so the other cattle do not trample and eat away the plant. That's first thing you got to do. And then you got to irrigate the plant slowly every time. And one fine morning, you will see the trunk is strong and the plant has become a solid tree, and it's going to wilt, and the world is going to appreciate the fruits of that plant. So ladies and gentlemen, from today, if you want to see your children successful, along with the formal education, give them personality development. True meaning of the word personality, develop them from inside. Give them their freedom. Other day, one of the parents invited me because I was training their children, two of them, brother and sister, and I was training them, and one day they invited me for an evening cup of tea. The boy was naughty. I knew he was very naughty. He was running about, and that young boy, just 8 years of age, was running so fast he jumped over the center table and went there, and he was climbing that iron gate which was very tall, and his father stood up and said, "Hey, come down, come down, you will fall." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What do you mean?" "You will fall, man." He said, "You want to ask me a question? What will you do? Let me do that for you." I quickly ran and stood below the gate, and I took this posture, and then I said, "Hey, come on, you can go up, man, go up, go up." And I was ready. By any chance, if he falls, it is me who is going to catch him. That's the role of a father. A few moments before, the father said he wants that son to be a pilot, but he never allowed him to go up. How will he fly an aircraft? It is his father who brought him down all the time. So there is always a way to become a great father. Inspire your children, support them, and that's the irrigation that you got to do all the time. Encourage them, but don't be mad. You got to be careful so that you protect them also, barricade them also from the danger. Ladies and gentlemen, personality development for the children is mandatory if you want your children to be successful. So take my word, along with your formal education, give these children personality development also, the total development, so that they flourish as a complete human being, as a total person. And that is what a successful person is. All the best. Thank you very much.